We must, yes, it's all about attitude. People who say that Futo can't succeed, I say impossible is nothing.
Okay. So we wanted to start this off. So a lot of people don't know anything about you, or they only know like a few bits and pieces that they see here and there across our videos. So just like, what is your background like, starting from the beginning?
I mean, I guess starting from the beginning, I was lucky enough that, my grandparents got me an Amiga when I was, very young. And as I was kind of nerdy and I liked programming, so I learned how to program on the Amiga. We got into C programming. Um, and then wound up doing computer science. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. Went to grad school because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then the internet hit, and it's like, oh wow, this is like, so like I love the idea of creating software to help people interact with each other. And I liked playing games too. I'm a very competitive person, so I wound up doing just a little site so that people could play multiplayer competitive games with each other, things like Bridge or Hearts was the first game I did, backgammon, chess. Um, and I just kind of, I just launched it, and eventually Yahoo noticed it. And then I was kind of, in grad school I was doing security, and there's some, what do they call it? There's like a word for when the math stops being easy at some point for everybody. Sometimes it stops being easy at like calculus. Sometimes it stops being easy at like, higher levels. And for me, like when I got into the number theory and things like that, it started being less easy. I was like, okay, I'll drop out. And Yahoo wanted me to work on the game site with them. And I was like, yeah, this is like, I feel like I'm way better at this than I am at other things. So I dropped out. Yahoo had a very good mission at the time, which was, we were really worried about companies like AOL, which were trying to monopolize, everything about the way people interacted with each other online. You would have to do a deal with AOL to get your content onto AOL. And they also had card and board games and things like that AOL players could only play with each other. So it was natural for um, me to want to create something where anybody could log in and play with each other. I was also, at the time I was, very, very, I mean, the right word would be butthurt. I was very butthurt about the Amiga having basically lost to what I thought were like way worse systems, Apple and Microsoft. And so, well, the place for us to go, if you were like the Amiga, would have been Linux, because like actually the Amiga did have a lot. It was like based on C. It was very much like Linux, like a lot of Linux, or Unix, I should say. Unix inspired a lot of the Amiga design. Um, so I was actually thinking, oh, I'll make a game site for Linux users. Um, it turned out that no, there aren't any Linux users. But luckily the Java existed at the time, so I became a big Java fanboy, and the game site was written as a Java application. And so what I wrote worked on Linux, which it was inclusive for the Linux people, but it also let Macintosh and Microsoft users also play. The landscape of the internet in the mid 90s would have been, it was just getting started. If you were somebody who wanted to be on the internet, you used your phone line to connect to the internet, and you could either pay AOL to connect to the AOL service, which was a closed walled garden, or there were like little tiny ISP companies everywhere that you could just pay about the same amount to and get access to the internet. It was kind of all text based until the browsers kind of started coming up. So you would get message boards with Usenet, things like that. And yeah, it was definitely not something I wanted to see. I did not want to see AOL succeed with their walled garden approach. I thought it was, when I first went to Yahoo, I was kind of impressed because the CTO of Yahoo, Farzad Nazem, his license plate was seriously "kill AOL." So that was like, it was a great mission. It was like, yeah, we're going to make we're going to kind of democratize online, the online world for people. And then so yeah, I was really, really excited and gung-ho to work at Yahoo. I started there in late '97, and I think we executed well. Like AOL did get killed. Unfortunately, we decided we weren't going to charge people to use our service. Instead, we decided to sell ads, and so that was kind of the beginning of the what you would call the surveillance capitalism, where you're trying to learn as much as you can about your users so you can sell ads to marketers who want to reach your users. So that was Yahoo's business model. And we were all kind of holding our noses and like, well, we still got to beat Microsoft, we still got to beat AOL, and this seems like a good way to do that. So I was there 6.5 years. I think we did kind of lose once AOL was kind of vanquished, we did kind of lose our sense of purpose. The dot-com bust was kind of hilarious. I mean, I could go into all sorts of detail about the dot-com bust if you like. We did try, Yahoo did try to do premium services after the dot-com bust, which I was like very much wanting to make work. And I wanted, my product, Yahoo Games, I very much wanted to make it work as a paid service and just get rid of the ads because the ads really weren't working that well for Yahoo Games. But, I was, Yahoo had a whole thing where they kind of, they paid engineers well and they gave us nice stock options and everything, but they kind of had this weird thing where they told all the engineers like, well, here's your product manager, and the product manager is the one who's responsible for the success of your product, not you. So it was a weird situation where kind of like just a less capable person in most cases was kind of calling the shots for your product. I think Paul Graham has probably written a lot about this, about how this happened to him with Yahoo Store and via web. And the same thing happened at a smaller scale with me and the game site. So after during this time, early 2000s, we all saw Google coming up, and from my standpoint, it was like I want Yahoo to be like Google. And so it was kind of a weird sense where it's like, well, I don't want to lose, but also Google's doing things and making people like me much happier. So I kind of want them to win just to kind of show these people here at Yahoo how to do things. Yeah, so I was one of the first people at Yahoo to leave in terms of like the core kind of contributors. And so I was actually kind of lonely because all I knew was Yahoo people when I left. But I kind of, kept busy, tried to do my own things. Eventually, more people from Yahoo quit, and I would help them on various gigs that they were doing. One of them was WhatsApp in 2009. Jan Koum came to me and Brian Acton and was looking for help with WhatsApp, and I was like, sure, I'll help. And I wrote some code and invested some money, but one of the things was, I was pretty clear with those guys that I didn't want to be putting my all, and to me, my all would be like 80 hours a week coding. Like, I didn't want to put my all into something if it was just going to be another Yahoo situation where it's like somebody else winds up in control and destroys your work. So I was like, well, I have to at least have a vote if we're going to sell out to anybody. And the answer to that was, this is Jan's decision if we sell out, and that's it. So I was like, okay, well, I'll help you, but I'm not going to be dedicated. So I kind of just helped for a couple months, help them get started. What did I feel about the WhatsApp purchase? So, I mean, I hadn't really talked to these guys since 2010, and I believe it was 2014 when the WhatsApp acquisition by Facebook was announced. I heard it at the same time everybody else did. I was like, okay, yeah, this is kind of why I'm glad that I didn't put my all into this company, because I seriously could have murdered somebody. Like if this was done, if I had put in 80 hours a week, I would have been very upset that all my work was like just sold to Mark Zuckerberg, who is not a person that I have a lot of respect for. I mean, I do have some respect for him in terms of his tenacity, and he does want to win. But he's also very, I mean, you can look at his, you can look at kind of his private conversations that have been made public in court cases, just to kind of see kind of what a weasel he can be. So yeah, I would have been very upset if anything I worked really hard on all of a sudden was owned by Mark Zuckerberg. I guess I would also like to say, I mean, why is this bad for consumers, right? Like, why was it bad? Why do I not want Mark Zuckerberg controlling this stuff? And it really is, we have a situation where, we should, like, we are lucky, like the people who can build this stuff, like, and I'll be arrogant and say I'm one of those people who can build these sorts of things. We are just very, very fortunate that we live in a time where we are well rewarded for, financially for building these things for people. But it's our duty to be, fiercely competing with each other to build better products for people. And so when people get lazy and they want to retire and they want to spend time on a boat, and they just kind of collude to let that happen, it's just like that's not a good thing to happen for consumers. Like, it's our job to make good software for consumers.
You talked about like, oh yeah, I was biking barefoot up to the Sand Hill Road legal offices and telling them no. I don't know if that's a story you want to tell, but that is.
Sure, I'll talk about it.
It's a very compelling story. So.
Yeah, I mean, there was after, the acquisition, the intent to acquire, it's like these things are complicated. There's an intent to acquire, and then it hits the news, and then there's all this diligence that happens, and then all the stakeholders have to kind of, what Facebook wants is they want everything clear and free of claims. So they wanted me to sign many things because I was an early contributor to WhatsApp. And I kind of I mostly respected Jan's decision, but I think I dragged my feet on a couple things. Actually, I think I dragged my feet on one thing. And yeah, it was just kind of funny how seriously they took it that I was not wanting to sign one of the documents to appease Facebook. And yeah, they did like summon me to a big giant conference room on Sand Hill Road with I think Wilson Sassini or one of the, might not have that right, but it was like one of the big firms with like 20 lawyers and like one representative of WhatsApp there, and just kind of like trying to figure out if I was going to make a fuss. And I kind of wish I had made more of a fuss, but I didn't. Because I was really by myself. Everybody I talked to at this time, everybody I knew was like, "You fucking asshole! Like, why you're making hundreds of millions of dollars off this acquisition? Like, you should just like be kissing like everybody's ass who's helping to make this happen." But I was very clear at the time that like they made the wrong decision. I told everybody that like, yeah, you should be competing with Facebook. You actually can beat Facebook, and like that's what we need. We need a like, I love the free market, and the free market works when kind of the elite, like, people who create wealth are competing with each other. So like the people who created WhatsApp needed to be competing with Facebook. After the WhatsApp deal, I was working with some friends of mine from Yahoo, even some childhood friends, to work on the Play-Doh to do kind of the game site properly, in a consumer-friendly way. The ecosystem was just terrible. I mean, at one point, Apple removed our app because we were told that it was a list of games was unacceptable, because only Apple is allowed to have a list of games in their store. And as soon as you have a list of games in your app, you're competing with the App Store. So that was, to me that was ridiculous that we had to negotiate with Apple to even, have a list of games in an app. Some people will just like, some people might respond to this and just like, well, I'm gonna like sue Apple or whatever. Like, to me, I'm more of a builder, so I was like, well, like, okay, Apple has built quite a bit. How can we build these things that aren't quite as evil? So that's when I started putting the bullet points for Futo together, which is just kind of like, there's all these things that big tech companies are doing to abuse consumers because it is so hard. The barriers to entry really are high, and they do play these anti-competitive games where they collude and they all sorts of things, and yeah, so I was just like putting bullet points together for Futo. I was like, let's build a organization that's just kind of doing things the way we think they should be built. Yeah, so in Texas, I was working on my own project, and I started putting bullet points together for like what Futo should be, and it's just really, it came out of me. I would have loved to just write it in a big check to like the EFF or someone trying to solve these problems. It didn't seem like the EFS was really focused on solving, like actually building things, and so it was pretty clear to me that like I had to just really be hands-on with like how money is allocated to solving these problems. And a mixture of philanthropy, like a mixture of nonprofits and startups trying to fund things that were solving this problem. I wrote down the Futo principles. I would be going back and forth to California this whole time because I was still helping with Play-Doh. Nobody I knew in California really cared too much about solving these things. Like I would, I think they just kind of thought it was impossible. And I was like, well, what else are you going to do? Like, you're just going to work for Facebook, right? So like, you may as well try, right? Like, if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need.
So you keep saying these things, but like elaborate on the mission of Futo and what these things are.
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately to me it distilled down to like, as a programmer, I have maybe some capabilities to do this. Why, it honestly was a puzzle to me in some ways because it's like, well, this is obvious to me. And compared to when I started programming, like seriously, professionally in the 90s to, when I was thinking about this in 2016, 2017, billions of people in this world have access to programming tools, and yet they aren't programming. For some reason, they're not building the things that they can build. So, it's kind of, to me, it was obvious, like, oh, well, we want more control of our computers, right? Like I want to be able to have more control. Maybe this isn't obvious to somebody who's not a programmer, but I think programmers all see this. It's like we can't just as a programmer, we can't just wave a magic wand and make stuff happen. Like you actually, to get something to work on, a Macintosh or whatever at a low level, you have to know all these things. So that's part of it. But there's also just like I was really like puzzled why open source, like there's so many open source people talking about open source all the time. I was always puzzled why again, there's billions of people with programming tools. They can all work on open source, and yet open source is failing, right? And so it's obviously a very complicated, it's a very intricate ecosystem to kind of solve, it's just a tough nut to crack, I guess is the best way I can say it. So I could kind of see why people were not optimistic about being able to make any progress, but at the same time there are like lots of people who say they're trying to make progress, and they've made a little bit of progress, but so part of it is just trying to accelerate and trying to make these kind of efforts that already existed more popular and more like good enough to have more users. So yeah, Futo, we wrote down like the primary, we have the Dune quote. The Dune quote has been there since I did the first list way back in like 2017 or 2018, which was, man created the thinking machine in the hopes it would set them free, but that only allowed other men with thinking machines to enslave them. I'm probably paraphrasing, but that's pretty close. And I saw what Google was doing way back with AdSense is, that is the beginning of AI. It's like if you want, you can talk about all the progress that's happened in the last 3 or 4 years. Google has built its whole company around understanding how to manipulate people into behaving in the ways marketers want them to behave. So that's always been there. And it's like, well, we got to make sure that individuals can control their computers. So that's the primary goal here at Futo, and has been since day one. It's like, what can we do to make sure that we keep control over the computers? Like we have all these computers here in this room, right? Like some of them we have full control over, some of them we have less control over. And it's becoming worse and worse as we progress. Yeah, so I mean, I started out just kind of as somebody who's I see myself as more of an individual contributor than a CEO. I felt like the best way to kind of get into learning these things, like learning what's going on and learning how how big projects how big software projects can be built, how hardware projects can be built, would be to invest in companies. So I started off doing that. In 2021, I finally found more people who were interested in solving this problem and were excited about solving this problem. Probably they existed before, I just didn't know them because I'm just not social enough. But so 2021, we really started getting going with Futo as an actual company, with a fellowship program, and talking to companies who wanted money for investment. And so we spent year 2 kind of doing that with fellowships, making friends with good engineers, learning about kind of the ecosystem of anti-establishment tech companies and things like that. I would say that I'm still as an IC, and I'm still I don't really like that much. I do like building, so as much as I might not be a CEO, I decided that it would be better to focus more on having things closer internal to Futo, developing software where it would be at least easier for me to, when necessary, kind of lay down the law in terms of this is the important thing that we're solving here, and all this other, all these other things that are important to you, all this bullshit that you think is so important, this is actually what's really important. So that yes.
If it was Lewis editing this video, he would put the clip in.
Yeah. So, and yeah. So now we're, I've actually feeling wow, I'm kind of very excited by kind of what we have here now at Futo. We have, a lot of very capable engineers now working on projects, and they are all really excited by our mission. And it's I'm really, we've got a few things out. Hopefully people are liking them, but I mean, people should also know that I don't consider anything other than beta at this point. Things can get much better than they currently are. So yeah, so I mean, to me, the social media problem is terrible because, the original point of the internet is anybody can publish. That's what made it great. You would write up something or make an image or whatever. You would upload it to a web server, and then you had many search engines trying to connect you to users. So like Google, all they cared about at Google was making sure that their users found content that they were looking for on the internet. And so to me, that's like, the internet is inherently social media. But now when you think about social media, you're thinking about Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, etc., where you just have one company controlling, your identity as a creator and the ability to discover new content, and even the comments on your content. All these things are controlled by one company, and they're doing really bad things with that now. So, that's one of the things we're really working hard to get right here at Futo. It's again pre-alpha where we are now, but things are going to get better. Our attempt at social media right now is called polycentric. It's seriously just us scratching the surface of what we want things to be, but there's some stuff in pre-alpha right now, polycentric.io. Check it out. But our goal is to make it so that users decide. I think the good way to think about it is, we want you. How does a user become in control of their social media? Well, they decide how the moderation happens, and they decide how recommendations happen, instead of Google deciding how recommendations and moderation happen, or Twitter deciding how recommendations and moderation happen.
Okay. So do you want to talk about some of the personal projects that you're working on, or like what we can expect from Futo for like this year?
Let's see. This year, the personal project I'm working. So I'm trying to like be CEO of Futo, but I still consider myself a programmer first. So, I'm really diving into kind of the belly of the beast here with my own personal project now, which is which I see as the kind of like the low level problem. I think a good way to explain this would be, if you want to build, let's talk about open source. Like open source is supposed to mean that you can see the source code, you can tinker with it, you can make changes, and you can compile it and run your own new program. And the best thing we have for this with our computers that we use every day is Linux, and the best Linux distribution for you to actually be in control of your own computer and actually do that compilation and make changes and tinker is Gentoo Linux, I believe. At least it has been, and it might still be. Anybody who's tried to do Gentoo Linux kind of knows that the promise of being open source is they try, and they're well intentioned. It's not like Android open source project where they're completely full of shit and making it open source. It's just not something where you can quickly make a change and have it run and have it recompiled and running to see what your new, to tinker. You can tinker, and then like an hour later you can see the results or whatever. And it's just really hard to get into, and really that's a very high threshold. So what I've been working on myself is this project called Fubs, and we're kind of trying to see if we can get a programming system working with just 50,000 lines of code, and that's it, with no dependencies on anything else, and that's as small as we can get it, to where a single programmer can actually tinker with all the software on their computer and actually see where the USB driver is, and see where the network driver is, and the display driver, and actually not have to have a team of 20 people to do these things. So that's the project I'm working on.
So you've used the if you don't master your computer will become your master quote a bunch of times. You should say that and explain where it comes from.
So our motto here at Futo is, if you do not master your computer will become your master. And it's kind of jokey and sounds silly, but it's actually true. We are more and more being influenced by our interactions with the digital world, which are all controlled by big tech. And I don't want big tech to be my master. So that's what, if you do not master your computer will be your master. That's why it's our unofficial motto here. But it comes from a movie Mystery Men, where the Sphinx has all sorts of like pithy aphorisms or whatever, and I think he's using them all the time, and eventually, what's his name?
Ben Stiller's character.
Yeah,
Ben Stiller.
it's he's like rage.
He's the rage guy.
Yeah,
right?
what's his name?
I forget what his name is.
The Ben Stiller character.
Yeah, the Ben
He's
Stiller.
not the Sphinx. Ben Stiller's not
Yeah,
the
Ben Stiller's not
Sphinx.
the Sphinx. So the Sphinx is doing these. The Sphinx is trying to train Ben Stiller, and Ben Stiller's getting agitated. To summon, you must first have to summon your power for the conflict to come. You must first have power over that which conflicts you. Your temper is rage. You must learn to master your rage. Or what? Your rage will become your master. That's what you're going to say, right? Not If you do not master your computer,
What? Your computer will become your master. That's what you're gonna say, right?
not necessarily.
Okay.